Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Beware the Board, a horror podcast where we watch a randomly selected horror movie every single week. I'm Bob.
I'm Ben. How you
Hey,
doing?
Ben. No.
Well,
Eh?
how you doing?
I'm okay.
That's good.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. I mean, we've had a good start to this season so far.
Yeah, I'm gonna be okay. Look, for those of you that have just joined us for this season, this season I was skeptical at first.
What were you skeptical of?
The whole thing.
Witches?
That category is skeptical. I picked it, but my picks are usually bad.
More like bitches.
Probably. I'm probably going to be screaming about bitches during all the witch films. No, I didn't know how to feel because I was like, Catholic as a genre, as like a category. I'm excited.
He says after he watches The Exorcist.
Yeah, but like that movie, I don't think of that movie as like Catholicism.
That movie is so Catholic it hurts.
I guess my thing is, after last season, I was kind of on like, I was like, this season will probably be fine. I'm excited now. Like, I'm hype. You know what I mean? Because I feel like last season we watched a bunch of films that were okay or amazing. In this season, I feel like we're going to have straight, I'm just expecting straight bangers from here on out.
I don't know if we'll have straight bangers, but, you know.
I'm just excited,
We
man.
could have bangers and mash.
Okay.
Ba-doom.
Okay.
That was an English joke.
Yeah. I know, and I don't understand it really.
Thank you. I'll be here all week. Bangers are their sausages, and then mash is mashed potatoes.
Why do
it's
they
a
call
dish.
them bangers?
It's a specific type of like sausage.
Okay.
You asked, I answer.
I understand. I just whatever. I had a train of thought. I was going somewhere. Basically, I'm excited for the season. Damn it!
That's good. That first movie was scary. That was cool.
The first movie was really scary.
I think what we've learned is that maybe we should revisit found footage again.
Nah.
I don't know. I watched a found footage movie last night, and every once in a while I'll watch a movie and I'll go like, okay, should this go on the board? Should it not go on the board? And this one I was like, this would probably do pretty good on the board. Bob would shit himself.
Damn it.
But yeah.
Nightmare update. I had nightmares.
Ah, well, that's good.
Yeah. Really bad.
It's always a
nightmares.
good sign.
You know how I told you we've recorded 2 episodes today. You know how I told you before we recorded last episode?
Yeah.
That I didn't get a lot of sleep? I had nightmares last night.
About what specifically?
Caves.
Caves.
Cave nightmares. Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Well,
they're not good.
on that note, do you have any news you wanted to share?
Of course I have news, Benjamin. Do you want to go first? I have a list. I don't know if you have
No, my
anything.
news was I watched a movie last night.
Okay, cool.
But I can't tell you what the
yeah,
name
yeah,
of it
yeah,
was.
yeah. Okay, so I'll start with the thing that is relevant to last week's episode because I talked about this last week, I think. Talked about Godzilla -1, I think last week or the week before, I don't remember. One of those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They're extending the release again in America. It's getting even longer run because it's doing so well. In Japan, in January, they're doing a re-release in black and white, which is super
That's
sick.
cool.
But I haven't seen the film, of course. I've only heard amazing things so far. That's super dope, but I don't know if it's slated to come to America, and that sucks.
It'd probably be on a Blu-ray.
Yeah, which I'm hoping they release it on black and white and Blu-ray because, I mean, you and I both like black and white films.
But it's also just like super easy filter to do.
Yeah.
Like worst case scenario, you could probably just play it on your computer in black and white.
I mean, I guess, but it probably, I'm assuming they'll do touch-ups and stuff to make the black and white look better.
You'd
don't know.
hope, right?
I mean, if they're going through all the effort to put a movie that is doing so on black and white as like a full theatrical re-release.
Yeah, but that's more of like an homage to the original.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. I just thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
This is relevant to the podcast. Hold on. Don't shake your head yet, you son of a bitch. He's already fucking looking at me like I'm crazy. This is not like last time. This is actually horror news, right? You know, a long time ago, I think this was during season 1, we released an episode with our friend Ashley that no longer exists.
Yeah.
You can't find it anywhere. And we watched The Strangers.
Yeah.
They're doing a remake.
A remake of The Strangers? Not like a...
Yes. So this is what I looked this up because I was curious because I was reading about it. The first movie, they're doing a Strangers trilogy. The first movie is a remake of the original. And then the second 2 films are completely like new content. And that's slated to come out in May of 2024, which I think is super cool because we didn't watch the second Strangers movie.
No.
But we did watch the first one, but that first one, the episode no longer exists because we did it drunk.
No.
And
Bob did it drunk.
no, we all drank.
I know. I was fine. Bob was drunk. Bob doesn't remember anything from that movie.
No, I have vague memories of that film, but I thought that was cool. So maybe we'll cover that when it comes out.
Yeah.
Because it looks cool. I mean, I'm excited. This is another one. James Wan is announced to be directing an adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu, which is cool. We did H.P. Lovecraft films a couple seasons ago at this point. I think that was season 3 or 4, something like that. If you know who James Wan is, he's known for directing The Conjuring, Malignant, and Insidious.
Yep.
All super famous horror movies, like beloved by some people. I've never seen any of them. I've heard Malignant is really good, though.
It's very good.
That's super exciting because, like, we covered H.P. Lovecraft stories, and I have never read H.P. Lovecraft. Benjamin has read some of his work. I feel like he'll be able to do a good adaptation of it because I feel like some of the movies we watched weren't good adaptations. Others were, and I'm hoping that what he does with it is a closer, like, read to the books.
It depends. So, like, the issue here, right, is called Cthulhu is like a really big cultural character,
Mm-hmm.
but is not like a really big story character
Okay.
because he just kills everything.
Ah, I see.
So he can't really have screen time.
Mm.
It's kind of like Godzilla in a traditional Godzilla movie,
Mhm.
where like you can't have Godzilla there the whole time, or everything would just be gone. You
Fair
have to
enough.
focus on other things, and that's kind of how a lot of the stories work with like old ones, the great old ones, and stuff like that. Point being is, I don't know how he's gonna handle the story,
Mm-hmm.
like if it's gonna be accurate to the books, or if he's gonna have to, if he's gonna be like putting a lot more like Lovecraftian stuff in there.
Yeah.
Because a classic thing with Lovecraft is you really can't do shit when you're faced with
The monsters.
the mythos. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
Because they're just.
you're a human, and that's a otherworldly being that can just murder you easily.
Mm-hmm.
So I point being is, I think James Wan will do a good job. Like you said, he's famous for a lot of stuff. You forgot to mention Saul,
Oh, well, that's the one I didn't
Yeah.
write that one down.
but yeah, he's famous for a bunch of stuff, and I think he'll probably do a good job with the movie, especially if he gets a good writer for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
I'm
think
just
Sam Raimi is also tied to this.
I don't know. We'll find out when it gets closer, but I think he'll do a good job with the movie. How well of a
Adaptation, it'll be.
adaptation is the question.
Yeah. I just thought I'd bring that one up because A, very famous horror director. B, we've already watched H.P. Lovecraft stories on the podcast.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll revisit that at some point and watch this new film. Also, Call of Cthulhu is like one of his most famous works.
Kind of, yeah.
Because, like, you know, Cthulhu. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
There's also, like, a video game adaptation of it. There's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it's one of those things, though, where Cthulhu is kind of the famous part of that story
Yeah.
rather than the story itself.
Okay. Last thing. You know Jordan Peele, director of Nope. What is that one?
Half of Key and Peele.
Half of Key and Peele. The other one,
Get Out.
Get Out, and then there's the other one.
Us.
Us. I've seen Us, actually.
Okay. Well,
was
you
okay.
forgot that one.
That was what I was trying to think of, was Us, because I've seen it. That and Nope. We did Nope on the podcast a while ago. Originally, he was slated to release a film Christmas of next year.
Okay.
It has now been pushed back indefinitely. We don't know when Jordan Peele's next film is coming out, but
Nice.
it's coming out at some point. They just haven't released a, like, thing about it. Like, no one even knows what it is yet.
That's never a good sign.
No, it's not. And that's upsetting.
Assumedly, it was actually not assumedly, because you release a bunch of stuff during the holiday season.
Mhm.
I was gonna say assumedly it's a Christmas movie, but
That would be cool.
probably not.
The reason I bring this up is because that's kind of upsetting because we watched Nope on the podcast. Nope's good. I liked it. And Us is fine. Like, what I'm getting at is I know he's a very beloved director, and when it comes to horror, he's one of the people that's kind of in recent years come out of nowhere and just started making good horror movies.
As originally a comedian,
Yeah, like,
it's cool.
it's cool, and I was excited for the new thing that he was going to put out. And now I'm just upset that they're pushing it back.
It'll come out eventually.
It'll come out eventually, but it's just like, damn.
You
that
still have
sucks.
a movie by him we haven't watched yet.
Yeah, we
so
haven't watched Get Out. I've never seen Get Out. We
you
should
can-
watch it.
You
at
can
some
cover
point.
that eventually.
We can. We should. I think that's it.
All right.
That's everything.
Well, then we gotta actually choose a movie today.
Yeah.
So we have 3 categories. As always, there's my category, which is always very exciting. It's Catholic movies. So movies focusing on like religion, but very specifically Christianity and Catholicism. Our random, which was another suggestion of mine from way back in the day, Universal monster movies. The classics, and then Bob's, which was Witches.
Witches.
Now I have a good guess for what Bob's gonna choose because he's already chosen Catholic movies.
Yeah.
So he's not gonna double dip, and that leaves
Well, no, on God, I'm too scared. On God, I'm too scared
no,
to double
but
dip.
you also just don't double dip. So then it leaves him two options. There's Universal monster movies, which was a random, but also my random, and then his own choice. If I had to guess, I would guess his own choice.
Yeah, but it's not for the reason you're thinking.
Oh, well, then what's the reason?
The reason is we've already watched Universal Monster Film on the podcast.
Yeah, we did Invisible Man.
Invisible Man, which means I kind of have a general, loose idea of what those films are.
Yeah, vaguely. I mean, we watched a bunch of pre-code stuff last season.
And that stuff wasn't from around the same time. So, we haven't watched a witch film on the podcast, and that excites me. That is something that I am so excited about is, generally when you go into a film, if you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, there's sort of some preconceived notions of what you expect. I don't know what to expect here, and that's exciting. That's something that I haven't had on the podcast in a long time, is going into a category where I'm going, the hell am I expecting out of this?
Witches.
Witches, and that's it. Like, that's the only thing I have going in, right? It could be whatever. So I'm choosing witches.
Okay. Your spots 1, 2, 3 open. Do you need to know what spot you chose last time?
No, what's in spot 3? I don't care.
And 3?
I'm wild now at this point. I don't care. I'm just picking spots.
The Craft.
Oh, I've heard of this one.
Yep.
I don't know a lot about it, but I've heard of it.
It's pretty famous.
Okay, sick.
It came out in 1996,
Hell yeah.
which is
Scream.
description. Let's get edgy.
Oh, God. That makes sense. I think I've seen the movie poster for this.
It's an hour and 41 minutes long.
Okay.
It's rated R.
Thank God.
IMDb gave it a 6.4 out of 10. Tomato Meter gave it a 57%. And an audience score of 65%.
That's honestly pretty good.
Pretty decent. It has 1 win and 7 nominations. Notable actors are Robin Tooney as Sarah Bailey. She played Annie Garrett in Vertical Limit. Fareza Balk as Nancy Downs. She played Dorothy in Return to Oz. Neve Campbell as Bonnie Harper. She played Sydney Prescott in Scream.
Holy shit.
Yep. Rachel True as Rochelle Zimmerman. She played Mona Thorne from Half and Half. She was on 91 episodes between 2002 and 2006. Skeet Ulrich
Oh, my God.
as Chris Hooker. He played Billy Loomis in Scream. Christine Taylor as Laura Lizzie. She played Holly Sullivan in The Wedding Singer. Breckenmeyer as Mitt. He played Spencer in Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare.
No, well, we know that's not true.
Nathaniel Marston as Trey. He played Michael McBain and Al Holden from One Life to Live. He was on 195 episodes between 1992 and 2007. Cliff DeYoung as Mr. Bailey. He played Colonel James M. Montgomery in Glory. Assumpta Serna as Lirio. He played Helena Studler in The Network of Freedom. Helen Shaver as Grace Downs. Played Carolyn in The Amityville Horror.
Ooh, we haven't seen that one.
No, we haven't. Janine Jackson as Jenny. She played Dr. Hassler in Red Dragon. It's related to Silence of the Lambs.
Ah, okay.
It's got our John Voight doing the face.
Doing his face.
Brenda Strong as Doctor. She played Captain Deladier in Starship Trooper. Good movie. Absolutely horrific adaptation.
I've heard that from multiple people.
Oh, it's an insulting adaptation. And the issue is it's a decent movie.
Yeah.
William Newman as Street Preacher. I played Sheriff Cronin in Leprechaun.
Oh, my God.
Leppy boy. Director's Andrew Fleming. He also directed Nancy Drew in 2007.
Okay.
The writer is Peter Filardi. He does the screenplay and the story. And then the other writer is also Andrew Fleming, who did the story. Budget's estimated at $15 million
Oh,
with a box office of 24.8.
damn.
So decent, but not great.
Not great, yeah.
Country of origin, United States. Tagline: Welcome to the Witching Hour.
Hell yeah.
So apparently, as far as facts go, I don't have much, but production apparently enlisted a real-life Wiccan named Pat Devon to act as an on-set advisor for the film.
That's cool.
She wrote incantations and ensured that, like, the treatment of the subject matter was as accurate and respectful as possible,
Huh.
for a horror movie. Aside from that, I think the only other thing to note is that in 2020, a soft reboot/sequel was released titled The Craft Legacy.
Huh. That's cool.
So I don't really have much else aside from that.
Okay. There's one thing I want to talk about right now.
Yeah.
Did this come out before or after Scream in the year? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Because, like, how do you cast Skeet Ulrich and Neve Campbell in the in 2 roles into a film like that?
It happens.
In the same year, though.
I mean, it happens.
Like, what I'm asking is,
I think they worked together before as well.
I don't know.
I mean, they're 2 actors working in the same genre
Mhm.
at around the same time. It's bound to happen. Okay, so this came out May 3rd,
Okay.
and then Scream came out
I guess I'm just curious which one did it first.
December 20th.
Wow.
So this
Damn.
one came out a little bit before.
This movie beat out Scream for the combo. I was just curious. Because that was just, when you were listening, actor was like, oh, we got a Scream actor. That's cool. And I was like,
Yeah, it's
we have
kinda
another
cool.
Scream actor. Cool.
But yeah, that's all I got.
Okay.
Go watch some witches.
Yeah. Well, see you guys in a minute. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We just finished watching The Craft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of the food? Was craft services nice?
Shut the fuck up. Oh my god. Didn't you make that? You made that joke when did you make that joke?
I think off the podcast.
Off the podcast. That's the second time I've heard that joke today.
And it
which
made
is
you
why I
laugh
laughed
both
this time.
times.
No, I think the first time I told you to shut the fuck up.
That is also true.
This time I actually laughed because I wasn't expecting you to use it during the podcast.
So, you like it?
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was cool. That was
I
fun.
did too. It was a fun time.
Yeah, no, it's a fun movie.
Okay. Podcast over.
Yeah, that's the episode, guys. Sorry.
All right. I'm going to start with a little description, and then we'll get into it. As always, go watch the movie
Yeah.
before we spoil stuff. I don't think this is like a heavy spoiler warning movie.
No.
I don't think we'll have like a spoiler section or anything, because there's nothing really at the end I think we really need to talk about.
Mm-mm.
However, it is definitely one of those movies where a lot of the fun, I think, is seeing how everything turns out.
Yeah.
So I'd highly recommend you go watch it before we spoil stuff. But if you want really quick, we can do a quick rundown. But generally what happens in the movie is that this girl is moving to a new city. Her name's Sarah.
Yeah, you got it right. Nice.
Yeah. I'd asked about halfway through the movie what her name was, which should tell you something about the main character. But Sarah's moving to a new city. I think we determined it was Los Angeles.
It is LA.
And when she gets there, she ends up going to a Catholic school, which really interestingly is co-ed,
Yeah.
which is weird, at least to me.
Are
Because
Catholic schools not normally co-ed? I don't know a ton about Catholic schools.
all the ones in our city aren't.
Really?
They're all like
Oh, I
single
guess you're
sex.
right.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that.
So that's how I'm used to it. But yeah, she goes to this Catholic school, and she ends up falling in with this group of 3 girls. There's Nancy, Rochelle,
Mm-hmm.
and Bonnie.
Yep. You got them all. You're doing
Boom!
good with names today.
Great.
Bro. I don't know how this is happening.
And like the 3 of them have kind of a reputation around school for being both the goth crowd and quote unquote witches.
Well, also bitches.
Yeah, but I say quote unquote witches because it's kind of like a rumor going around school because these 3 wear like all black and it's a Catholic school. So,
Mhm.
it's the classic, they're the other, so let's call them witches. But yeah, anyways, Sarah ends up falling in with them, ends up eventually starting to practice witchcraft with them. I say witchcraft. They're doing like Wicca rituals and stuff. And lo and behold, the spells start to escalate, and maybe, just maybe, some stuff starts to happen.
Maybe it gets out of hand.
Maybe the spells are real. So yeah, that's the description. If that sounds interesting, again, I'd highly recommend you watch it. I had a lot of fun during
No,
this
I had a
movie.
really good time.
I thought it was a
This
great
movie's
time.
fun.
On that note, though, we are going to go into like our regular discussion, so spoiler warning. So do you have anything specific you want to talk about? Like right off the bat, or...
Not really. Do you have something? Because I'm kind of in a weird spot.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's one of those movies where I really enjoyed it, but it's
Yeah.
a little hard to talk about because I was like, that was an experience.
Yeah.
Okay, then the thing I want to bring up right off the bat is right at the start of this movie, it does this really fun thing where it kind of leaves us in this gray zone of whether or not magic is real. So, I mean, we start off and it's these 3 girls who are practicing witchcraft, but it's rituals and stuff they found at this, like they read these rituals from books that they bought at a store for like $25.
No, they stole from a store.
They stole from a store, but we see them buy a book from there later, and it's like $25.
Yeah.
So they're like finding stuff that's easily available, and they're practicing it, and it's framed in a way to seem like it could potentially be real, but a lot of the stuff that they see and they're like, "Oh, we did that. That's magic."
It's just like happenstance stuff.
It's just random happenstance of I saw this happen and I believe it happened.
Yeah.
So it's magic. And to be honest, I think that's a really good play. Now, eventually it's revealed, 30 minutes into the film,
Oh, more than that.
maybe a little bit longer, that there's actually magic happening.
Yeah.
And it's interestingly enough done not during a spell sequence, but during like a game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really liked the beginning of this movie where it was just like, maybe it's magic, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just weird happenstance, and these teenagers, because they're teenagers and they want magic to be happening,
Mm-hmm.
just believe that everything that's outrageous happening in their lives is something they did.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I thought the movie did a great job of setting up stuff that could be happenstance. Because until that point happened where they were like, okay, here's magic, and it's definitely magic.
Yeah.
It does look like the movie's going to go on the whole time of like either or.
No. Yeah, I really like that too. And I think it does a really good job of transitioning from this is maybe magic to this is magic. Like, there's a really good moment in the film where, like, it's a full switch. Going from that, I want to talk about the fact that the use of magic in this film is very practical magic in a lot of ways. It's very, like, not in your face, super, like, whimsical, ridiculous magic. It's all sort of, like, not to say natural, but it sort of feels grounded in a way that makes it feel a lot more realistic, I guess, if magic were real.
Yeah, I think what Bob's trying to get at is a lot of the quote-unquote magic that's practiced in this movie are, like I said at the beginning, it's based on, like, Wicca and stuff. So a lot of it's based on, like, actual magic that people practice, like, in the modern day.
Mm-hmm.
And while there's, like, real, I think, exaggerated effects of it, it still has that basis in, like, things people really do. And so it's not like, oh, I'm going to magically make some flowers appear in my hand. It's more like, let me carry out this whole ritual, and then this effect's going to happen eventually.
Well, I guess more my point is the magic isn't super, like, in your face, overt, like, ridiculous bullshit.
That's fair, except until the end.
Even then, I don't even think it's that bad. Like, they're not, like, running around shooting fucking lightning bolts out of their hands and shit. Or, like, doing crazy, like,
Harry Potter stuff?
Harry Potter shit, yeah. It's
Yeah.
very, like, grounded, realistic magic, if that makes sense. Even though magic,
It's magic. I mean, I think it's that idea of, even though we have a sequence in the film that very explicitly tells us, hey, this is magic and not just happenstance, a lot of the magic in the film feels like it could be happenstance.
Yeah.
Or like dream or something like that. And it does give it a lot of, it gives it a low fantasy.
That's
kind of
really what I'm
vibe.
looking for.
And just a level of, I don't know, realism.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think all of that's really cool, how they handle the magic in this movie.
No, me too.
And I did like how it went into, like, a full magic style.
Mm-hmm.
But a part of me is also like, it would have been so interesting to watch this film as, like, a character study of, like, a bunch of people who think magic's happening
Yeah.
and nothing's happening, but they're just freaking out about it.
No, I think that would be cool, but the movie would be completely different.
Be a completely different movie.
You know what we can talk about? We can talk about some stunt stuff. Because there's one particular thing that happens, and I said it during the episode. I don't know if we clipped it. It might be the best version of that thing we've seen on the podcast. Because it is so brutal.
I think you can just say there's a car accident.
Yeah, there's a car crash scene. And it is one of the best ones we've ever seen on the show.
Yeah.
Like, it is framed so well and shot so, like, intensely that it's so good.
Yeah, and I think it's really helped because it's sudden.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where you can expect it, but it is.
Yeah, you
really
see it coming
sudden.
from a mile away, but when it hits, it's just so brutal.
Yeah, and it's one of those sequences that, again, it happens early in the film, so it's before we've established that magic's a thing. So it just
Mhm.
feels like a natural part of this universe.
Yeah.
And I think that does make it hit a little bit harder. And you were talking about how it's one of the most brutal things in the show. I mean, how it's framed, I almost want to compare it to the car crash scene in. I know we haven't watched it on the show, but I know you've seen it in general. Toxic Avenger.
Yeah.
It's a very similar, like, brutality level of framing
Mm-hmm.
with certain things being, like, crushed. But what's so interesting about, this movie is, first of all, it's one of the few, like, very violent things.
Yeah,
in
there's
this
not a lot of
film.
violence in this.
And even though it's framed really violently and how the accident itself is shot, the after effects are not, like, graphic at all.
Yeah.
They're very, very just not.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even really tell anything happened.
Yeah, this is a very light on blood and gore. Horror. It's not really horror.
Suspense,
Suspense is really.
psychological thriller.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought that was an interesting choice because, like I said, this accident's very early on in the movie. So it does set the tone of, like, there could be some shocking
Mm-hmm.
stuff happening, like violence and stuff, but it's not really going to be shown. And I honestly thought that matched the tone of this film very well,
Yeah.
to not have excessive gore.
No, I agree.
But I thought it did help keep the stakes up, that we were, like, really early on, we were like, people can die.
Yeah. And spoiler, people do die. And
People
the
do
deaths are
die.
fucking brutal.
Even though we don't really see them.
Even though we don't see them, it's just like, oh my god, I'm literally sitting there stunned, like, I can't believe that just happened.
And I think it's because we get that early one
Yeah.
out of nowhere.
You talk about some of the practical effects on the magic, and like the special effects on the magic.
Yeah,
It's 1996,
it
so
is
some of it is
1996.
okay,
Yeah,
but some of it is really good.
I think that really comes down to, again, we've talked about how the magic is, I don't know, low fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you're unfamiliar with low fantasy, high fantasy is like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or Star Wars. And the idea there is there's a lot of, obviously, fantastical elements, but, like, magic and stuff like that, it's very evident. And a low fantasy would be where those are very, very minor. Do you have a good example of another low fantasy work? Off the top of your head?
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, that's a very good one. I mean, even the dragons in that tend to be pretty biological in a lot of ways. And even Game of Thrones operates on the higher end of fantasy for a low fantasy kind of genre. If you're a role player, D&D first edition is pretty low fantasy compared to later editions. Anyways, as we were saying, the magic in this is very kind of low fantasy. It's very, like, it could be happenstance, it could be direct most of the time. And so a lot of the magic effects are able to get away with practical effects. So, like, show them, whether it be kind of like an illusion. Like, occasionally we see, like, illusions of, like, roaches or snakes and stuff like that. There's a really insane sequence later on in the movie where we see a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And those are all done with, like, real animals or
spiders.
at the very least plastic ones
Yeah.
disguised in with the real ones. I just want to say that sequence is really impressive for the sheer amount of stuff they had to shoot together. I was looking at it. There was a lot of snakes in that sequence.
God, so many
Just because
snakes.
of how snakes are generally associated with witchcraft. And I was just blown away seeing a bunch of snakes together because snakes tend to be kind of chill for the most part,
Mostly.
especially if they're handled well and stuff. And if you feed them, they don't eat a lot. But if you feed them regularly and they're not hungry, they'll be even more, like, chill. But it's still impressive to get a bunch of different snakes of a bunch of different sizes together in, like, large batches.
Yeah.
Because snakes will eat each other. So I just wanted to bring that up. I thought it was wild, especially because they had different animals mixed in with them. Like, there were some spiders and some snakes and some roaches and some rats all in, like, a tiny area together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, some cool animal effects. For practical effects, they also just had some different props or some different sequences framed.
Yeah.
Like some lightning hitting stuff.
Yeah, they did. I assume that was CGI lightning, or it might have been laser arrays. I really couldn't tell.
Yeah, and then they just had, like, some practical explosions and stuff like that. There was a few, like, things just washed up on a beach.
Yeah.
Or at one point they had a couple different containers explode. Maybe
There's
like,
some floating and stuff like that.
yeah, and then there's the the non-practical effects of magic and the more special effects.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, well, the practical effects are technically special effects. I guess this would be visual effects, CGI. Stuff done in post. And those looked iffy.
Fine.
They look like
it's 1996.
1996
Right.
CGI, especially for a movie with $15 million, which isn't like a lot to
Mhm.
do CGI in 1996. So it didn't look great, but it didn't look horrible.
No,
I mean,
it was passable.
it was better than The Rock in The Mummy, 2?
Yeah.
So,
God.
pretty great right there.
And that movie came out after this for sure.
It did. 2000 something,
I was
right?
about to say, it was early 2000.
Because the original one came out in 1999. But yeah, the visual effects were fine. They were passable. They were, I think, my least favorite part of the movie.
Really?
But I think that's also because I really liked when they framed all the magic as something that could be real.
Yeah.
Like, even once we were later on in the film, we were like, this is 100% magic.
There's no way it's not.
It was more interesting as, like, a mechanism to the plot and story when it was, this could be because of something else. Both from, like, a visual perspective of, like, practical effects, but also from a story perspective. I think the best example of that is one of the characters of the main four, Bonnie. It's established pretty early on in the film she has scars on her body. They appear to be burn scars, probably from an accident of some
Yeah,
sort
I don't think it's ever actually explained.
when she was younger. Eventually they disappear. And it's heavily implied, because we learned that magic's real, that it's magic that does it. But before her scars disappear, she goes in for an operation that's, like, designed to, like, get rid of them anyways. And I really did like that framing of, even though we know it's magic, it could still be either or.
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting.
No, it's cool.
It also, I think, made the effect better when her scars disappear,
Yeah.
because there was, like, a natural transition for it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also a pretty good transition into kind of the characterization for all four girls.
Oh my God.
Because we have, these four witches, right? Our four main characters who are practicing magic together. And they all have very different reasons for doing so and different goals for it. We have Bonnie, has a lot of self-confidence issues and is wanting magic to feel, like, more confident and beautiful.
Yeah.
Rochelle, who is struggling, like, socially because she's black, and she goes to, like, what is essentially an all-white school.
Yeah.
And she has to deal with a bunch of
Racist assholes.
Yeah. Nancy, who's from a poorer family and has, like, a bad home life and is just generally trying to deal with the shit from that, and then also shitty assholes at school who take advantage of her. And Sarah, who has a dead mom, and it's never explained why, but was suicidal at one point before coming to LA. It might even be that she came to LA because her dad wanted to get her away from home. But in either case, they all originally start practicing to help with their issues. We said Bonnie uses magic to get rid of her scars. Rochelle uses magic to get back at one of her, I guess, main antagonists.
Yeah.
Nancy uses magic to make her home life better. And Sarah uses magic to get a boy who was horrible to her,
Who is a shitbag.
to like her.
Yeah.
And then she uses that to, like, humiliate him. Sarah does kind of admittedly act the worst with it at the beginning.
I was about to say, maybe, I don't know about that one, buddy.
I don't know. But the thing I want to get out here is how the girls are before they start, like, actually using magic, and after they actually start using magic was very interesting, because their personalities really change.
Yeah, there's a big shift.
And the movie even makes a point of, like, noting that in the story, because Sarah points it out, and she's obviously the main character. And I'll go back to Bonnie again, where she's very, like, withdrawn and not very confident at the beginning of the movie. And once she starts fixing her issues, she becomes very confident, which is good for her, but she also becomes kind of, like, narcissistic and an asshole. I thought that was really interesting, but the thing I want to point out is there's a theme noted throughout this movie. This idea of whatever you wish for will come back threefold.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to note is, like, well, all these people got, like, their wishes granted. Like, they performed magic and they got what they wanted. It felt like they were all negatively affected by their wishes.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm going to use Bonnie as an example because we keep touching on her. I think it was the most evident for me, but she wished to be beautiful. Like, she wanted to feel like she's beautiful. And so the end effects is she starts to feel narcissistic rather than, like, because she didn't wish to get rid of her scars.
No.
She wished to feel beautiful. Rochelle gets back at her, tormentor, but then she becomes the tormentor herself.
Yeah.
The less said about Nancy, the better.
God.
That's just a spiral.
Oh my God.
And I mean, Sarah, she gets someone who's obsessed with her, and that goes down a very dark path. And I don't know, for me, that's, I think, the thing that I think really made this movie work
No, yeah.
is the fact that the magic had consequences.
I was about to say, this movie is straight up, your actions have consequences.
I love the classic monkey paw kind of setup for magic, but also just the effect it had on the characters. That idea of power corrupts,
Yeah, for sure.
but also sometimes, like, you get what you wish for, not what you want.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing for me is like the addition of the paying a price for what you're asking for is, it adds a layer of, to add more effect to like the natural feeling of the magic of
Mhm.
like, you're paying a price.
Especially because
Things
it
aren't free.
wasn't a very literal price.
No.
Like, you expect it to be really literal, and then
Mhm.
it's not. It was generally, like, more subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're not paying attention, it doesn't feel like there was any consequences.
There were definitely
But there was
consequences to their
definitely
actions.
consequences. If you look closer, but it's not as evident as, like, oh, you're literally paying up threefold.
Mm-hmm.
Thought that was cool. Really in line with the tone.
No, yeah, that's one thing about this film that I really enjoy is tonally, it has an arc and it makes sense, and there's no point where I go, nothing feels off. It all meshes together really well and all makes sense.
Yep.
Which is very nice. We've watched some films recently that were not that, and that was upsetting.
Aside from all that magic stuff, I think the only other thing that really sticks out for me, because I'm going to mention it here because I know Bob mentioned it right at the beginning of this movie, it feels like a 90s movie.
Oh my God, this movie feels like it's from 1996.
Yeah. Just the appearance of everyone.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just the setting, the appearance,
the
the
setting.
music. Oh my God.
It screams 90s. I mean, if you're kind of looking for something more in the vein of Scream,
Mm-hmm.
or I Know What You Did Last Summer, super
Yeah.
90s feeling kind of stuff like that.
No, yeah. Thought it was fun. I think I have one last thing I want to talk about.
Okay.
I think, we haven't really touched on like the performance of the actors at all in this. They all do a really good job.
Yeah.
But I want to highlight Nancy because she does such a good job, I think. Like, there's, like Ben said, there's like a progression. There's like, we see changes once the magic sort of takes over and
Yeah.
like makes changes to them. The flip on Nancy is so, so, so good. And I think her performance at the end of the film is really, really good.
Yeah, I honestly think it isn't just Nancy. I think Nancy and Bonnie,
Mm-hmm.
both characters, I think, had the most aggressive personality flip
Mm-hmm.
from beginning of the movie till the end.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do as an actor, to go from, like, okay, I'm acting one character one way, and then I have to go to a completely different, like, mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was just a really, really good job from both of them. Nancy's Fairuza Balk, and then Bonnie Sneeve Campbell. But I just wanted to mention, they did a great job.
So good.
Because that's hard to do.
Yeah, it's hard to do, but it's hard to do well because like it can feel sudden and like out of place in a lot of cases. It's just like, oh, why are these characters doing this thing? But this movie does a very good job of like showing natural progression. It's slow and subtle, but it works. And by the time you get to the point where they're completely changed, you've had enough time to adjust that it doesn't feel out of place.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then, I guess on that note, do you want to go to recommendations?
Sure.
Okay. Take it away.
If you want to move from the 90s, it's a 90s movie.
Yep.
It feels like a movie from the 90s. It's shot like a movie from the 90s. Every movie from the 90s, Ben said this, that we've seen on the podcast, has a very distinct feel. Like, you can tell from the cinematography, the style. It just feels like a 90s movie.
I don't think it's every 90s movie, but it's very specifically there was a counterculture movement in the 90s.
Every 90s movie we've seen on the podcast.
That really hit horror, I think,
Yeah.
hard. And so it's just, like, imprinted into the genre for
Mhm.
movies of that time period. I mean, I said it earlier, but this movie feels a lot like I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah.
Or even Scream in some ways.
I was going to say, even Return of the Living Dead 3 hits me hard on this one, too.
Fair enough.
I feel like Skeet Ulrich and Neve Campbell, they're in this movie. They do a good job.
Yeah.
They're cool.
They don't interact a lot, which is interesting. Like, you can tell this movie
Yeah.
came out pre-Scream
Yeah.
because they're not as focused on
No.
as you'd expect.
They're like, they're around. They're side characters. They're cool. I like them. If you want a movie, if you want a movie that's like light on blood and guts and you want like a horror movie, not a lot of blood and guts in this film. There is some blood. It's not completely blood free, but it's light. If you want a movie that Ben said this. Well, Ben didn't say this on the podcast. Ben said this when we were setting up. Didn't you say we almost watched it on the CW?
Oh my god. How I was looking at like where this was streaming, right? And it streams a bunch of places. I say stream, like where you can get it for like digital playback, on demand, whatever you want to call it. And one of the places was on the CW channel, like their streaming service. And I was like, Bob, you're going to love this.
Yep.
It's 20-something-year-olds acting like teenagers that are over-sexualized. That's not a jab at Bob. It's more of a reference to Bob liking Riverdale,
Yep.
which is basically that.
So here's my recommendation. If you like CW shows like that,
Was The Flash on CW?
The Flash was CW. I
that
never
makes
watched The
sense.
Flash.
Was Arrow on CW?
Also CW.
Okay.
Watch this show or watch this movie. It gives CW vibes. It does. So if you're into that, I think that's it.
All right. I don't know if I have as many recommendations as Bob. I mean, I think all of his were good as always. I'm just going to go for one different one. And that's if you're kind of looking for a teen like horror movie from the 90s. We covered meta horror. Not the same genre, but it's that same feel.
Mm-hmm.
This is really good. But more importantly, if you want a movie about like witchcraft and magic,
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty good one, especially in like a modern setting.
Yeah,
Like, this
no,
is
that was
not-
cool.
I think classic witchcraft when you think of witchcraft.
No, I didn't know if we were going to get a movie set like in the modern day about witches or not on this, like in this category. I didn't know if you were going to go all classic like Witchfinder General or something.
Yeah, but if you're looking for like a more modern take on witches, I thought this was pretty interesting without going into like tropes.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, though, if you want to give it a rating, Bob,
I'm kind of in a weird spot because I like this movie a lot. Like,
I did
think
too.
it's fun, but I don't know.
it's not perfect.
It's not perfect,
It was a lot of fun though.
It was a lot of fun, and I had a really good time. I was thinking to myself before we started recording this part of the podcast, I was like, I don't know what I give this, a 3.5 or a 4, and I think I'm gonna give it a 4 over a 3.5, mostly because the ending is really good. Like, I like the end of this movie a shit ton. I think it's probably one of my favorite parts.
It's fun. It starts to get a little what the fuck, I will
Does it?
say. Yeah, but that's more because magic gets progressively more common as the movie goes on.
yeah,
And by the end, it's getting to the point of, like, it's almost too much.
really, you think so?
Yeah, for how, like, again, low fantasy the whole
Mhm.
film was. Once you start to have too much of it,
Yeah,
it starts to get the mid to high fantasy.
that's fair. But I think the reason I'm gonna move it from a 3.5 to a 4 is because I mentioned this earlier. I think overall, the movie has good tone and good story beats, and everything that you want to come back around does. Like, there's nothing left like looked into. Like, there's no plot threads that they just leave out there and go and do nothing with. Everything's explained. It all comes back around in a nice, neat, folded up way. I think it's a very, very tight like story overall, and I think that's why I have to give it a 4.
Okay. I'm going to give it a 4 as well. I mean, partially that's just because I enjoyed it.
No,
I had
yeah,
a
it's fun.
really great time. But I think the real reason it's going to get a 4 instead of like a 3 or a 3.5 is how well it treats the magic.
Yeah.
Like I said, they had like someone come on to make sure they treat it like respectfully and have, the rituals and everything seem realistic. And I thought they did a great job with that. I thought everything looked really good. It seemed to be pretty in line with my understanding of more modern practices. And I thought that gave everything a layer of realism that really helped and fit the tone. And again, I think that helped this whole like low fantasy, like this could be real, it could be magic, kind of minor plot thread really, really take off.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that really keeps me from giving it any higher than a 4 is, how 90s this feels. I mean, honestly, it's almost too punk at times.
No.
Like the 90s feel isn't necessarily a negative, but you know what I mean. It's a style.
Yeah. No, I get it.
But to be honest, the actual real thing that keeps me from giving it a 4 is the lack of what I would consider realistic interactions between the girls and like the people around them. It honestly felt to me that, well, there was this really interesting like plot line and story with these 4 main characters going on. The interactions they had with other people weren't as aggressive as I thought it would be. Like,
okay.
Everyone was just really casual towards them, and it made the film feel a little bit weird at times. Like, their story was happening outside of the rest of the universe going on. Straight up, they're practicing, witchcraft, if that's what you want to call it, and they go to a Catholic school.
Oh, yeah.
So they're all from, like, probably pretty religious families. At the very least, they're surrounded by religious people. Everyone knows they're doing this, and there's no, like, kickback as far as we can see, outside of maybe some whispering from schoolmates. But I look at that, and I'm like, those nuns would be going crazy.
It's true.
Or, like, all the girls will have satanic imagery in their houses, which feels a little bit weird if any of their parents are really religious. There's just general stuff like that. There's also some weird interactions between them and like the store they go to where they're buying like stuff from. Yeah.
It feels like the interactions between the girls are very plotted and planned and like very well thought out, but the interactions they have with everyone outside of their circle is sort of just there because it has to be. It doesn't feel that nuanced and like it doesn't have the same impact as their interactions between each other does.
Yeah, it just seemed like the rest of the world wasn't as realistic. I mean, I even mentioned this kind of jokingly to Bob during the movie, but the 4 girls are very obviously not in uniform like the whole movie, and everyone else is in pretty strict uniform, yeah. And no one says anything. Weird. I don't know. It was just like there was a weird interaction between the girls and
there's just a disconnect,
especially because again, they're practicing witchcraft, and that was not necessarily looked upon well. I mean, remember the Satanic Panic just happened.
Yeah.
Like, what, less than a decade ago? That was the 80s. Baby. And this is the mid-90s. So it's just really weird that it wasn't, like, a part of this film. I mean, it didn't need to be a focus, but it feels like it should be a background.
Yeah, and I feel like adding that as a background thing would really strengthen, like, their reasons for doing witchcraft, because if there's more kickback from like society,
well, it really strengthens, I think, the relationship between the 4 girls, because it's like, oh, we're the other.
Yeah,
like there's nowhere else for us to go now. But they didn't do that, and
you get that kind of, but it's not as strong as it could be.
Yeah, again, they didn't do that. I think it would have made the film better. I think that without that, I can't go higher than a 4.
Fair.
So yeah, on that note, I think we're gonna go to the outtakes.
Yeah.
So we'll be back in a minute.
Yeah. See you guys in a minute. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the outtakes. Do we have any announcements? Ben.
Nope. Yeah, so no announcements. So I guess, usual stick. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcast, other places on the internet. We're also on YouTube, which is a nice place to show us some support, with your likes and subscriptions. That's really easy for us to see, much easier than like Spotify or something. So that's kind of cool for us. YouTube's also nice because it has a couple tools that are really handy. There's a bell button, which you can ring to get notified whenever we post something new, in case like we forget to tell you about a holiday or something. That'll notify you, and then you can go over and watch it on Spotify or something instead of YouTube if you want. YouTube also has a search button, which is really nice because you can search like all our videos if you're looking for maybe a movie we've done. You don't know what episode that is. YouTube is one of the main places you can communicate with us at. It's probably its main purpose. You can do that in the comment section of a specific video, or you can go over to Twitter at Beware the Board and call on Bob of the North and ask him for his guidance.
A little bit of an aside before I talk about Twitter. I just realized this is our first episode of the new year. This is coming out after the new year.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You did just realize that.
Yeah, I know. I just realized that at the end of the episode. Damn. Anyway, check us out on Twitter at Beware the Board. It's where I post updates about the show, information about the show. Basically, if there's anything you don't know about the show, it goes on our Twitter. On Mondays, I post a spoiler post for that Friday's episode, which is a hidden movie cover that you can reveal. So you can watch the movie before we do, so that whenever you listen to the episode, you don't get any spoilers. And when we're being vague about stuff, you kind of know what we're talking about. Then on Fridays, or whatever day an episode goes live, I always post a link to the episode with maybe a meme if something was funny. So if you ever miss an upload or want to know when something went up, there's always a link on our Twitter. Last thing, we do short form content at Beware the Board on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts. So if you like short form content and enjoy the show, check us out there at Beware the Board on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts. Ben, I think that's it.
All right, well, we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next time.